I never thought the love of my life could betray me. 8 years of marriage, countless memories, and one text on her phone shattered everything. Meridian, 9, miss you. Not from me. My chest tightened. My mind raced, and in that moment, I realized Lisa had been hiding a secret I wasn't ready to confront yet. I didn't yell, I didn't cry, I waited. I planned. Every move, every message, every careful step would turn the tables. But as I set my trap, nothing went exactly as I expected. How far would I go to make her regret her choices, and would the truth destroy us both? The rain had been relentless that week, tapping a nervous rhythm against the windows of our townhouse in Brookline, Massachusetts. It was the kind of rain that made the city feel smaller, more intimate, like it was conspiring to keep secrets. Ethan had learned over 8 years of marriage that life had a way of looking perfect from the outside, while quietly fraying at the seams. Lisa and I had met in college at Boston University. She was all laughter and sharp comebacks, and I, hopelessly introverted, was drawn to her like a moth to a flame. I remember thinking once that no one could make me laugh like she did. Those years felt like a movie, late-night pizza runs, studying for finals, sharing Spotify playlists, like we were curating the soundtrack to our own lives. We'd married shortly after graduation, and at first, it was exactly what I wanted: stability, love, partnership. We bought our townhouse in 2016, just as the city was blooming with new coffee shops and co-working spaces. Lisa had a career in marketing, climbing fast, charming clients and colleagues with that same easy smile I'd fallen for. I worked in tech, more behind the scenes, building systems no one noticed until they crashed. It wasn't glamorous, but I liked the quiet. We made a good pair, or so I thought. Somewhere along the line, though, the edges began to fray. It wasn't dramatic. No shouting matches or obvious betrayals, just little things I noticed in hindsight. Lisa would laugh at a text, screen her phone when I came near, or make excuses to be out late. I chalked it up to work stress, promotions, and the general chaos of life. I told myself that love wasn't perfect. It was nuanced, layered, patient. But deep down there was a small, persistent feeling that something had shifted, though I couldn't name it. Our marriage, like most, had routine. Sunday brunches at the corner cafe, grocery runs, where she insisted on picking organic produce, evenings on the couch watching whatever documentary or true crime show caught our attention. I'd often watch her while she scrolled through her phone, thinking, how did I get so lucky? She'd grin up at me and smile, and for a second, all doubt would vanish. But I'd catch the way she tensed when I walked into a room, or the way she laughed at messages I wasn't part of, and I'd feel a flutter of unease in my stomach. I didn't talk about these feelings, not with friends, not even with family. I wasn't sure they were even real. I had always been the type to process internally, to dissect and analyze, until I either understood or convinced myself I did. My brother Marcus lived across the river in Cambridge, and we'd meet for beers on Fridays. He'd ask me about Lisa sometimes, and I'd answer the usual, she's great, work's busy, life's good. No one knew what was growing in the corners of my mind, little seeds of doubt I didn't want to acknowledge. And then there was the small tension of finances, the subtle way she sometimes dismissed my opinions, the casual mentions of clients, trips, or dinners I wasn't invited to. She was ambitious, and I respected that, but I'd feel a quiet pang when she talked about someone like Greg, her manager, or clients at Meridian Consulting, places I'd never meet. I'd brush it off. I always brushed things off. I remember one particular morning in October. The rain had started early, misting the sidewalks outside. Lisa was getting ready for a client presentation, and I was sipping my black coffee, scrolling through emails. She was humming, always humming, and that hum, normally comforting, had started to feel distant. I watched her pack her bag, tossing in folders and a laptop, and I had this fleeting thought that I couldn't shake. What if there's more happening than I see? I laughed internally, dismissing it. I was being paranoid. That had to be it. The truth is, I'd been holding on to subtle signals for months. A lipstick stain on her scarf she laughed off, a lingering scent of perfume I didn't recognize, texts I caught glimpses of before she locked her phone. My mind wove stories to explain each one away: a client's gift, a colleague's compliment, stress relief. But deep down an uncomfortable knot was growing in my chest, a tiny voice whispering that my perfect marriage might be more fragile than I thought. I was tired but content that night, thinking of the weekend plans, brunch with Marcus, a walk along the Charles, and maybe an early movie. Lisa leaned against me on the couch, scrolling her phone while I watched the rain streak against the window. The world outside looked messy, chaotic, but inside, we had our bubble. I convinced myself everything was fine. I told myself it always had been. Little did I know, that night would be the last where I could convince myself of anything. It was late Friday night, around 11, and the rain had turned from a soft hiss to a steady drum against our windows. I had stayed up longer than usual, nursing a glass of scotch and half watching a rerun of Breaking Bad, the kind of show that made me think about choices, consequences, and life. Lisa had gone to bed earlier, claiming she had an early call with a client the next morning. Her voice was calm, almost sing-song, when she said goodnight, but I noticed the faint shimmer of perfume lingering in the air, a scent I didn't recognize. I told myself I was imagining things. I was scrolling through my emails when I noticed her phone lying on the couch, screen lit up from a notification. For a moment I hesitated. It felt like staring at something forbidden. Part of me wanted to ignore it, to trust her implicitly, like I had always done, but the small nagging doubts from months ago had grown into a steady hum in my chest. I picked up the phone. The lock screen displayed a message preview. Meridian, 9, miss you. My heart stopped. Not from me. The words didn't even need to be explained. My chest tightened. My fingers froze over the screen. Everything I had built, every memory I had cherished, suddenly felt like it had been wrapped in a thin veil of lies. Lisa, my wife of 8 years, was cheating. I couldn't process it immediately. Denial was the first wave, my mind insisting that it must be a misunderstanding. But the timestamp, the sender, the casual miss you, it all hit with brutal clarity. I dropped the phone onto the couch, feeling an odd mixture of disbelief and rising fury. My mind raced. I thought about the past year, the late nights, the unexplained meetings, the laughter at texts she didn't show me. Every detail that I had dismissed as innocuous suddenly felt like evidence. My chest burned with anger, but it wasn't the kind of anger that made you want to scream immediately. It was sharper, colder, a calculated, simmering kind of fury that demanded planning. I remembered all the little things I had brushed aside, the time she worked late at the office, but came home smelling of a cologne I didn't recognize. The time I had glanced at her calendar and noticed a recurring entry for Meridian Consulting dinners I wasn't invited to. I had chalked it up to networking. I had been blind and now I hated myself for it. But I couldn't confront her yet. Not to. My mind, frenzied, but focused, began to piece together a plan. I needed proof, control, leverage, the kind of power that didn't scream, but whispered. You underestimated me. I remembered the old habit I had from college. When faced with a problem I dissected it, analyzed it, solved it. This betrayal wasn't going to be different. The next morning, I woke up with a strange calm. The rain had stopped, leaving the air damp and cold. Lisa was still asleep, the soft morning light outlining her silhouette. I looked at her, and felt a pang of sadness mixed with contempt. I knew that behind that peaceful face lay deception, a secret she had thought she could hide forever. I swallowed the bitterness, and smiled as if nothing had happened. I started with the obvious, her email. I knew her password habits well. Our wedding date was the key to almost every account she had. With trembling fingers, I logged in. The inbox revealed everything. Emails between her and Greg, her boss, detailed plans for dinners, photos, receipts from Meridian. Each item was a dagger, each screenshot a confirmation of what I already knew. My hands shook, but my mind was sharp, focused. I began saving everything, meticulously organizing it, as if preparing for a chess game I was determined to win. I didn't tell her I knew. Instead I suggested a date night for that evening, keeping my voice calm, practiced. I watched her face light up, that easy smile I had once adored, completely unaware of the storm brewing in my mind. Part of me wanted to scream, to shatter the illusion, but I knew patience was my weapon. I needed to be clever, precise. Throughout the day my mind kept replaying memories, moments I had ignored, laughed off, or misunderstood, the anniversary we had forgotten, the time she had laughed at a message and hid the script. I felt a cold clarity. I had been blind, and now I had the power to see everything, to reclaim control, not with violence, not with shouting, but with intellect, strategy, and timing. By evening, I had arranged the plan, the swanky restaurant, the private booth, the burner phone, all ready. I sent the first message, pretending to be Lisa, calling Greg to Meridian, setting the trap. Every step was calculated, every move deliberate. My pulse was steady now, the initial shock giving way to a razor-sharp focus. This was no longer about betrayal, it was about reclaiming dignity, about proving that deception had consequences. Sitting across from Lisa that night, toasting to forever, I felt an odd mix of sorrow and triumph. She laughed, oblivious to the knowledge I now carried. Outside, the rain had returned, soft at first, then persistent. The world seemed to acknowledge the tension in my chest. I sipped my drink, smiling, planning, waiting, and in that moment, I realized that betrayal was not just a wound, it was and I was about to pass it in a way she would never forget. The days after that Friday night felt like living underwater. Everything was muted, the sound of the rain against the windows, the hum of traffic outside, even the voices of coworkers seemed distant, muffled. I went through the motions of life, but nothing felt the same. Lisa moved around the house with her usual energy, laughing at shows, humming in the kitchen, scrolling her phone, completely unaware that I knew her secret, and I watched it all in silence, a storm trapped behind my chest, simmering with anger and disbelief. I couldn't confront her, not yet. Every instinct screamed at me to yell, to demand answers, to tear down the lies brick by brick, but I had learned over the years that reacting too soon only gave power to the other side. I needed control, I needed patience, so I acted normal. I smiled, I poured coffee, I asked about her day as if nothing had changed, but inside, my mind was constantly analyzing, replaying, and planning. Every text she sent, every call she took, I scrutinized like evidence. Sleep became a fragile thing. Some nights I'd lie awake, staring at the ceiling, imagining confrontations, rehearsing conversations, envisioning how I could make her feel the sting of betrayal without losing myself in rage. Other nights, I'd dream of them together, the smiles, the touches, the casual intimacy I had thought was reserved for us. Waking up from those dreams left me hollow, my chest tight, my hands clammy. Work didn't provide an escape either. Sitting at my desk in Cambridge, I found it impossible to focus. Emails blurred into one another. Presentations became exercises in autopilot. My colleagues noticed the change. Marcus texted, worried, "You okay, man? You've been off all week." I lied. I always lied. "Just tired," I said. That was easier than explaining the fracture in my life, the betrayal that had shattered my sense of trust. Even our friends started noticing. At dinner with Julia and Dan, I laughed at jokes I barely heard, contributed little, and constantly scanned the room for signs of Lisa's guilt. She seemed perfect, unshakable, carrying on as if nothing had happened, and that was the part that gnawed at me the most. The sheer audacity of her normalcy. It felt like salt in a wound. There were flashbacks too, moments that I had long forgotten, resurfaced with brutal clarity. The time she said she was working late, but came home late, smelling of someone else's cologne. The night she lost her phone in the couch cushions, but texted from it a few minutes later, laughing off my question. The way she sometimes lingered on calls with Greg, her voice softer, lighter, different. All these fragments, which I had dismissed as coincidences, or paranoia, now stitched together into a horrifying tapestry of truth. Even small routines at home became exercises in vigilance. I noticed which rooms she lingered in, what time her laptop glowed with activity, which emails she opened and quickly closed. I couldn't trust any of it, but I had to maintain appearances. Breakfasts were quiet, lunches at my desk were mechanical, and evenings felt like a careful dance of pretending. Pretending was exhausting, but I realized I had to master it to see this through. The psychological toll was immense. I caught myself overthinking every interaction, reading into tones, expressions and gestures. Was that smirk from her genuine? Or was it calculated? Did she think I suspected? Or worse, did she enjoy keeping me in the dark? Anxiety clawed at me, a constant pressure behind my eyes. My thoughts became a labyrinth of what-ifs. And how could she? I felt trapped in my own home, in my own life, surrounded by someone I no longer knew. I tried to confide in myself through journaling. I wrote late at night, long pages of raw, unfiltered thoughts. Some entries were desperate, others venomous, but each one was a small release, a way to map the emotional terrain I was navigating. I chronicled every observation, every suspicion, every fragment of anger, every pang of sorrow, and in doing so, I realized that my focus was shifting. The pain wasn't just about betrayal anymore, it was about reclaiming control. I couldn't erase what she had done, but I could strategize, outthink, and reclaim the balance she had disrupted. Friends offered advice I didn't take. Just confront her, once, leave her, another suggested, but I wasn't ready for confrontation, not yet. I needed information, leverage, and clarity. Every time I imagined a scene of confrontation without preparation, it felt hollow, impotent. This betrayal had to be addressed on my terms, not her. Meanwhile, Lisa continued her charade. She laughed at jokes, poured me coffee, and asked about my day with the warmth of someone who had done nothing wrong. And every time she did, a quiet rage simmered beneath my calm exterior. I was learning patience in a way I had never known, waiting, observing, gathering pieces. It was a different kind of intimacy, one with shadows and hidden cameras of the mind, cataloging everything for a moment that had yet to come. By the end of the week, I realized that my anger had shifted into focus. The raw burning fury was no longer consuming me, it had transformed into clarity, precision. I had collected the initial evidence from her phone, her emails, I had started to sketch a plan in my head, testing possibilities, predicting outcomes. The betrayal had fractured my world, but in its place, a new sense of agency emerged. I wasn't just a victim anymore, I was a strategist, a player in a game that demanded patience, cunning, and resolve. And in that quiet, tension-filled week, I began to understand that revenge, or perhaps justice, wouldn't be about confrontation or anger. It would be about control, about reclaiming the narrative she had tried to rewrite without me. It would be about precision, subtlety, and timing, and most importantly, it would be mine to dictate.
By the following week, I had settled into a routine that felt almost ritualistic. Every morning, I woke before Lisa, sipped black coffee while scanning her emails and calendar, noting meetings, client dinners, and anything that seemed out of place. I had set up a small system, burner phone for messaging, discrete recordings for evidence, and a private folder on a hidden drive for everything I was collecting. The meticulousness calmed me, a way to turn the chaos of betrayal into something I could control. I spent hours rehearsing scenarios in my head. How would I catch Greg? How could I make Lisa understand that the trust she had shattered could be mended only on my terms? It wasn't about violence or anger anymore. It was about psychology, timing, and leverage. I imagined her shock, the subtle tremor in her voice, the exact moment she realized the carefully constructed illusion she had maintained was crumbling. That mental rehearsal was intoxicating, and it fueled every small action I took. Friday came, and with it the first real step of the plan. I booked a high-end restaurant in downtown Boston, a place with private booths and dim lighting, the kind of location where secrets could be revealed without prying eyes. I coordinated a casual dinner with Lisa, using my calmest, most loving voice to invite her. She smiled, her expression effortless, unaware that the night was no ordinary date. My hands remained steady as I guided her into the restaurant, chatting about nothing in particular, masking the storm brewing inside me. At the same time, I set up the burner phone, sending Greg a message disguised as Lisa, Meridian, 8 p.m. Wear the gray suit. I watched Lisa's reactions carefully. She beamed, touched by the gesture, completely unaware that she was about to be confronted not with shouting or exposure, but with a controlled, orchestrated revelation of truth. My private investigator, a discreet and affordable hire I had engaged for backup, was stationed nearby, instructed to observe Greg and report back. Every minute felt electric. I kept up the facade of the devoted husband, toasting forever with a smile that masked the jagged edges of my heart. Lisa laughed, brushed her hair behind her ear, and I felt that odd mix of nostalgia and disdain, memories of trust and intimacy colliding with betrayal and scheming. My phone pinged, a message from the PI, "He's at Meridian, gray suit, with a blonde." My pulse spiked, not with fear but with calculated curiosity. This was unexpected. Greg had arrived with someone else, not Lisa. The sting of betrayal had shifted, And now there was a twist I hadn't predicted. I excused myself, stepping outside to check the live feed from the PI's mic. Greg's voice carried Lisa's just fun. My anger flared briefly, but then I realized the potential here. I had more control than I initially thought. This wasn't just about Lisa or Greg anymore. It was about the power to dictate the narrative, to expose selectively, to make her understand without needing a dramatic confrontation. I pulled out the burner phone and sent Lisa a single simple message. Check the bar. Her brow furrowed, and I saw her glance around, confused. I let her stand there for a few seconds, curiosity and unease building in her expression. Then I sent the final piece, an edited video showing Greg with the blonde, time-stamped, clearly intimate but carefully manipulated to stick. My PI's cousin played the part, and every second of the clip was designed to provoke shock, guilt, and realization. Her phone buzzed, her face drained of color, eyes widening as she processed the scene. Ethan, I can explain, she stammered, but I didn't let her off the hook. I showed her my own copy, the organized annotated folder of evidence, every screenshot, every email, every receipt. The impact was immediate. The carefully constructed illusion of control she had maintained for months crumbled. I didn't yell. I didn't cry. I simply said, no need. I know about Greg, you'll come clean in therapy or this hits your family, your job. My voice was calm, deliberate, almost clinical, but underneath was the fire of 8 years of trust shattered and meticulously reclaimed. She nodded, tears brimming, understanding the precision of my actions, the inevitability of consequence. There was an odd moral clarity in that moment. I hadn't humiliated her in public. I hadn't resorted to violence or revenge in its rawest form. Instead, I had reclaimed my agency, orchestrated the confrontation with precision, and ensured the lesson would linger. It was justice, cold and deliberate, delivered in silence, through evidence and controlled exposure. As we drove home, the rain pattered against the windshield, mirroring the quiet intensity of the night. Lisa remained silent, and I let her. My victory wasn't loud or flashy, it was subtle, a slow-burning realization that she had misjudged me, underestimated my patience, and taken for granted the trust I had extended freely. By the time we reached our townhouse, the storm outside had softened, turning into a drizzle. Inside, the air felt heavier, charged with an unspoken acknowledgement of what had occurred. I felt a strange mix of relief, triumph, and residual grief. The betrayal had left scars, yes, but in its aftermath, I had discovered strength I hadn't realized I possessed. That night, as the city lights shimmered on wet pavement outside, I sat alone for a while, replaying the events, analyzing the steps, and understanding the transformation I had undergone. I realized that the storm of betrayal had been the crucible I needed to refine my patience, my precision, and my understanding of control. And in the quiet, I knew this was only the beginning of our journey. She had been caught, exposed, and humbled. But the real victory wasn't just in the plan, it was in the knowledge that I had maintained my composure, my clarity, and my humanity while reclaiming what she had tried to take from me. The morning after the dinner felt strangely quiet, as if the city itself had exhaled in relief. I woke to the soft grey light filtering through our bedroom blinds, the faint hum of traffic on Commonwealth Avenue below. Lisa was still asleep, her breathing steady, untroubled, and for a moment, I felt the old tug of nostalgia, the wife I had loved, the laughter, the shared dream. But the knowledge I carried had changed everything. Nothing would ever be the same. Breakfast was awkwardly silent. She avoided my gaze, fidgeting with her coffee cup, as if she could disappear into the porcelain. I didn't speak. My mind was calm, almost clinical, reflecting on the events of the night before. The video, the edited evidence, the PI's notes, all of it had done its job. Lisa understood the consequences of her choices, understood that her carefully curated lies could not withstand scrutiny. And yet, there was an unspoken tension, a fragile thread of our life together that hadn't snapped completely. Over the next week, the atmosphere in the house was a delicate balance. Lisa followed my lead, agreeing to therapy sessions I suggested, her demeanor cautious, careful. She didn't try to justify her actions, didn't argue, didn't plead. She simply complied, and in her quiet acquiescence, I found a strange sense of relief. The storm of betrayal had passed, leaving behind a calm, though fragile sea of understanding. Therapy sessions were awkward at first. We sat across from Dr. Reynolds, a seasoned therapist who could read between words and silences alike. Lisa spoke haltingly, admitting to the affair, describing the hours of secrecy and the thrill of deception. I listened, my emotions a complex mix of anger, disappointment, and an odd detachment. I realized that the real power wasn't in exposing her, it was in controlling my own response, in guiding the narrative toward a place of accountability and clarity. There were nights I lay awake, revisiting the images, the texts, the moments of plan. I felt a pang of sorrow, a subtle ache for the years I had invested, for the trust I had extended freely. But alongside that grief was a steady flame of pride, not for the act of revenge itself, but for the patience, the strategy, the composure I had maintained. I had been wronged, yes, but I had chosen my response carefully, deliberately. That choice was mine, and it restored something I had feared lost control over my life. Friends began to notice subtle changes too. Marcus commented on the quiet confidence in my voice. Julia observed a calm intensity in my eyes. No one could pinpoint the source of the change, and I kept it that way. The betrayal, the plan, the triumph, it was mine alone, a private reclamation of dignity and power. The knowledge that I had orchestrated the events without resorting to chaos, without destroying her completely, gave me a measured satisfaction that was far more enduring than any fleeting revenge. Lisa and I moved cautiously forward. The air was tinged with tension, yes, but also a fragile hope that transparency and accountability could rebuild what had been broken. I wasn't naive. I knew trust would take time, perhaps years to reconstruct. But the foundations were laid, not with fury or violence, but with precision, strategy and clarity. I had forced reality into alignment with truth, and in doing so, I had regained my sense of agency. One evening a few weeks later we sat together on the couch, the rain once again tapping lightly against the windows. Lisa didn't speak much, scrolling through her phone with deliberate care. I watched her, thinking about the journey we had taken from blissful ignorance to betrayal, through careful orchestration, and toward a tentative understanding. I realized that in that journey I had changed. I wasn't just a husband wronged, I was a man who had learned patience, strategy and the value of calm precision in the face of chaos. There was a strange intimacy in that silence. We didn't need to speak to acknowledge what had happened. She had learned the weight of her actions, and I had discovered the strength in mine. The betrayal had been a crucible, and I had emerged tempered, sharper, and unshakably aware of my own limits and capability. Driving home later that night, the streets glistening with rain, I reflected on the twisted arc of events. There had been shock, anger, planning, execution, and finally, resolution. It was a story that could have ended in ruin, in screaming confrontations and shattered lives, but instead it had become a lesson in patience, control and the quiet, devastating power of knowing the truth. Lisa sat beside me, quiet, reflective, her presence a reminder of both what had been lost and what could be reclaimed. I wasn't naive about the road ahead. It would be long, fraught with lingering doubts and the occasional flash of memory, but for the first time in weeks, I felt an odd sense of closure, not complete healing, not perfect resolution, but a balance restored. And in that balance, I recognized the ultimate truth. Betrayal could wound, deceive, and destabilize, but it could not take away the clarity, intelligence, and patience of a mind determined to reclaim its agency. The storm had passed. I had endured, adapted, and emerged in control, and in that, I found my quiet triumph.